All right. Hello and welcome everybody to the Your Best Self podcast, where I get to interview successful and or inspiring people that get to share their story, what obstacles they have been through in their life, and what lessons they learned along the way in order to inspire you and the world. My name is Robert Hurt, and today I have the honor to be interviewing Cristian Moldovan, who is a coach and a trainer who uses empathy and deep listening to transform your relationships and become happy and at ease. Now, for over 10 years now, Cristian Moldovan takes people through transformational obstacles or transformational coaching, basically, supporting them to overcome struggles, conflict, and significant obstacles. Now he's helping both teams and individuals to set a solid foundation for harmonious relationships and enable happiness and peace. With that said, Cristian, thank you for taking the time out of your day. Thank you for being on the podcast, on the interview. How are you doing today?
Well, thank you for the invitation. Today is great. I'm based in the Netherlands, and I see the blue sky, and that's not something common for this part of the year. I'm super grateful because we have this opportunity to have this. I call it a chat. More than I would love to discover more things. So
fantastic. So, Cristian, tell us a little bit about yourself and where did it all begin? What do you do?
Well, if I would start recalling the things, basically what I'm doing, what I work with on a daily basis, I help people to solve conflicts because I've been in the training industry for the past almost 15 years now, but in the past 10, I worked on team, from team buildings to team performance management. And there was always one thing that was like a roadblock into achieving the performance that every team is capable of, and that was conflict. So that's why I said, okay, I need to dive into this one. And I discovered like a whole new world with so many amazing things. And the main issue here is people see conflict as something that needs to be met with resistance rather than develop their skills to navigate conflict to get better results in the future. So I actually try to go backwards in up to my childhood because when I was a kid, I was living on a street, and we were like a lot of kids there. It's the main city in Transylvania, Romania, and we were like in the 90s. Something like 30 kids on that street, and I was living in the middle, and there was a gang on the left, a gang on the right, and they were always having conflicts, like north and south kind of things. So I was always in between. I was always like, hey, wait, I was friends with both sides, and it was always a challenge, like, okay, let's not kill each other for a while, okay?
Oh my God, yeah.
And I didn't realize that up so far, like a year ago, like, oh my God, I've done this all my life. And I've been always somehow in the middle. And the best thing, it was that I have some kind of patience that people envy me for. So I started to search more about conflict and what are the things that started conflict. What is the fuel that conflict needs in order to grow? And everything leads down to some basic things that we think we know and we master, but as a matter of fact, we don't. So I got to explore more about empathy, as you already said, because empathy is one heck of a skill. When you develop that as a skill, you're unstoppable. It's incredible. And the human needs is something that we all think is like the Maslow pyramid that kids are taught in school, and that's it. And it's like good for statistics. I know that, check. But if we would take like a little bit of time to understand what the human needs are and the fact that all humans have the same needs, oh God, we would be so much better at a lot of things. Like communication.
True.
Yeah.
So you basically grew up, in conflict situations, and that's sort of where have you already been, during that time where you've been living in between, two gangs, basically, have you already been sort of taking the role of a coach? Because he said like, hey guys, like, let's not kill each other right here. Have you been already like actively sort of taking this role on as a child?
I don't know if I can call it a coach back then, because I wasn't following any kind of progress.
Sure.
It was like crisis management.
Yeah. Yeah.
Imagine like 10 to 15 kids on a side and 10 to 15 on the other, and some of them would have like clubs and improvised weapons. But I don't know if you can imagine how ridiculously the scene is, because we were all like 7 to 10 years old.
Oh no! Yeah. Oh God.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was so amazing. Yeah. I'm laughing every time I remember those times. It was like crazy.
Yeah.
But later on, I started volunteering and working with teenagers and adults and children as well. That's the moment when I started to develop my coaching skills, because when you're volunteering and you're part of an organization that follows impact and wants impact in the society, you need to grow the people around so you can scale the impact. And I started a chapter of an organization like 8 years ago, and that was 4 years after I've been running the same organization but for a different chapter. And for these like 12 years I had to grow people around me, otherwise all the organizations would not exist today. And that was the one thing that took me out of my comfort zone and say, okay, you need to learn stuff in order to grow stuff.
True.
And that is so important. And I actually made it my day-to-day mantra. Like every day I got to learn something new, something that's useful, that takes me towards my end goal to achieve my mission. Otherwise it's a lost day.
Yeah. And it's also very important, because I believe like if we are not growing and not learning, we are basically dying. There's the saying, like, if you're not growing, you're dying. And I love the view on the day-to-day life, to be sort of curious about what can I learn today, like how can I improve today to become the best possible version of myself and live the life to the fullest, right? So that's that's an awesome view to go into the day and living life, basically. So let's go back there a little bit. And I'm curious, like, you started being a coach sort of like 15 years ago, right? And how did you get into, like, what made you, you've been volunteering and that's sort of where you got into the coaching, but why did you decide to volunteer? Like, what made you do that?
Well, there's something that always makes me tick. Well, there are people that run towards an organization when things run smoothly and everything is fine. And there are people like myself that run towards an organization or a cause when things are not working. To me, when something goes south, that's the moment I'm triggered, because just being able to work in like a little or big crisis moment where you can straight up some things in order to put things back to normal, that's super exciting for me. And one of the things I'm super passionate about, and I started developing like a special attention for this in all my interactions with people, is I'm trying to understand how they prefer to get the information, how they learn, how do they perceive a message differently to the way I perceive a message. Because fundamentally we are the same, because we have our DNA is so similar. We could even say we are the same, but in reality we are so different entities. And it's the little the small differences that make the identity. And to me, being able to express my identity is super important, and also to everybody else, because it's one of our human needs to express ourselves. And the fact that I am expressing myself in a way doesn't make it like mandatory that you will express the same. And when I started to think about what is the one thing that makes us all so different, even though we are literally the same, then I started to find a lot of biological differences that we have, even though the 99.9% of our bodies work the same. There are like structural things in our behavior, in our attitudes, in the way we consume content and information, and the way we process thoughts, we're so different. And that is beautiful. It fascinates me how one thing, like one radio message or like this podcast, can be super useful in one area of life to one of our viewers here, and super useful in a totally different area of life, because they perceive the message differently. And that's the beauty of people, actually. That is what triggers me. And of course, there's one more thing that I always loved, and it's also one of my main needs as a human being, the need to contribute. Having an impact. Everybody wants to do something in a smaller or bigger degree to be of service to others. True. Even if it's at the scale of your own family or in your relationship, or if maybe you want to do it like worldwide. And it doesn't matter of the scale. We all have that need of significance, of contribution, of doing something for the other, to serve. And I just love doing that. It gives me so much energy, and it's like the one thing I constantly do, and I never run out of fuel for. It's just magic.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, because, from all the interviews that I had with people that are, already sort of, successful and at the top, and they have, money, they have, things going for them. Usually what is truly fulfilling to them is that impact on other people, is that having this positivity and spreading that, to others, and, help others grow. And that's, for me personally, that's fantastic. I love seeing people grow and transform. And then, knowing that it is you who had this positive impact on other people, that's like more rewarding than any money that you can probably make, right? Because, and I love that this is like one of the higher human needs, that, having an impact is, what we want. But, I love also, what you said about us being individual, and, everybody perceives a message in a different way. And I totally, can relate to that, because sometimes, some person says something to me, and I understand it in a way where it's, all right, it's, I take it, personally, but, it's fine. But others are like going incredibly crazy, and, it's so funny, not funny, but interesting to see how like one message can impact people differently, right? So during that time where you sort of learned how to become a coach, how to, solve conflicts, what were some of the conflicts that you personally had that you had to sort of overcome, and how did you overcome them?
Oh God, I hope we have enough time for this. Well, one of the things that people around me know pretty well is, and some people actually say that I'm a conflictual person.
Okay.
What my friends and people that I work with know is that I'm a pretty stubborn guy, that I'm usually constantly looking for a debate when we're talking about ideas. And I love debating. So while working, especially in volunteering, but also in the businesses that I had so far, debating an idea to me is the best way to shape it and to give it like its finest form in order to put to action. And for me, debate is a way to explore things and to learn new things. And some people don't have the same thresholds as I do, so they might take it personally, as you said, or like, hey, why do you insist so much on this? Well, I'm trying to prove a point here, but if I don't have a partner to prove that point, and I didn't figure this out so many years, so I had conflicts in NGOs, for example. I've been part of the board of the National Scouting Organization in Romania, and we had like super deep conflicts, and just because we were debating at the core of like the principle behind the decisions that we were making. So at some point we couldn't align, and we had like real conflicts. And actually, I had to leave the board for that.
Oh, okay.
And this is more on the professional side, where I've been working in teams, and also in my business. I had a business, and I split with my partner because we had a conflict that I wasn't capable to manage at that point. That was a long time ago, and before I started all this, actually.
Yeah.
And on the other side, I think everyone on this planet has conflicts back at home.
Yeah.
And it's so important to make a topic out of this, because we don't speak. It's like the shameful thing to speak about the conflicts I have with my wife, or with my mom and dad, or with someone in my family. When in fact, this is a conversation that we need to have, because we don't know how to navigate conflicts, neither personally, neither at work. And unfortunately, conflicts are one of the biggest energy drainers in our lives. And just take this example. You're fighting with your girlfriend or wife or spouse, whatever, husband.
Yeah.
How draining that is.
Oh my God, yeah.
Where's your drive for that day? How productive are you? Like maybe your productivity will drop for a week.
Yeah.
Why? Just because we weren't able to navigate that conflict in a way that would provide value to the both of the sides.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unfortunately, there are people that actually win out of conflicts, but at the expense of others. And that's not nice.
No, absolutely. I totally agree that conflicts are really, really draining to you. And, just being also in a relationship where you have conflicts, and obviously, like, not only in a relationship, but also in business, in teams, and all of that, conflicts, as I said, they are draining your energy, and they are leaving you unproductive for a long, long time unless you resolve that conflict, right? So what are some of the main conflicts that working with teams and working with individuals, that people usually have?
Well, if I would take my customers right now and ask them what is the conflict that they regularly get into, mainly all of them, at least in the beginning phase when I'm working with them, would answer, well, my boss requested me something that was not in my job description, and my boss keeps giving me work that I should not do, and things like that.
Yeah. Okay.
That is one of the things. Another one could be actually have more and more people wanting to overcome conflicts back at home, and it always starts with something like, my husband did that, or my wife did this. And when we go over, like, take away all of the leaving the socks on the floor, or my boss is an idiot kind of arguments, and we get into the details and the specifics, it always gets down to some very basic things, like, I haven't been listened to. This is like so important. We live in a society where everybody wants to speak and nobody's available to listen. And listening is it's a skill nowadays.
Oh yeah.
Unfortunately, it is a skill. We were born with this. We were taught to listen, but for some reason we just forget about it. While we're engaging with someone, we have like 10 devices that scream for our attention, and our attention is so divided. And even though there are people that are genuinely capable to interact with me, for example, like in my relationship with my wife, she is that kind of person that can manage 3 things at the same time.
Yeah,
I don't.
Yeah,
I'm really bad at that.
Yeah,
and when she's on the phone while speaking with me, texting someone else, I know she can be fully
present,
engaged and present in the discussion with me. But when I'm doing that with her,
it's like,
what?
Yeah, exactly.
Can you say that again?
Yeah.
And that gesture of not having eye contact is the little spark that just amplifies things and there are there is this behavior when you see something about the other person. Like imagine you're in an office and someone wants something from you or blames you for something. It doesn't matter. There is an issue there, and you perceive something in their way, in the way they speak or in their behavior that's inappropriate. Okay, and when that happen, like judgments are like the fuel of conflict. And when you have like a neuron in behind of your brain and saying, "I told you so," he that's the kind of the person that will always bug you, that will always upset you. And the next moment we're going to meet and interact with that kind of a person, it's always going to happen. Something will be there, like, oh, confirming that behavior and confirming my idea about that person. And we construct fake identities to people, and we put labels. And when we do that as people, well, there is one really bad thing that happens actually. And we start switching from seeing the people around us as human beings to seeing them as obstacles. And when you see someone as an obstacle, and we do that especially when we do this switch. And another type of conflict that is usually happening is when, and this is very general, but I'm going to go to specific in a moment, when there is someone in a position of power, for example, in companies, at work, and there is a team leader or a manager that comes to the team and start imposing stuff to the team. And giving direct orders is not something unusual, but giving direct orders without listening a little bit beforehand can be perceived by the team as, you didn't even ask my opinion on that. Maybe I have a better idea. And just how many people have this question in their minds? Like, how many times did my boss thought that they have a better idea than anyone else? It just happens a lot. And listening is one of the little things that can solve many, actually not solve, prevent many conflicts. And if I'm to navigate this a little bit more, when it's when someone actually wants to impose something, what they're doing is not giving an order, like an actionable thing, and we're upset about the action. We're upset about the fact that we have some human needs, as the need for contribution, the need for independence, the need for significance, in this case specifically, that are all limited. And I don't even want to go to the need for choice. When people limit our choices, how frustrating is that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So basically these are small ingredients, and when you put together, a big fire comes out.
Okay, that's interesting. And I totally agree with you that sort of listening is a rare skill these days because of all the technology that is around us. And I just noticed that with the people around me that I usually, like, even though I know that for instance with my girlfriend, even though I know that she can listen to me while she's typing, I prefer waiting for her to finish and then talk to her, having that eye contact, right? Because it just feels better for me knowing, like, and really realizing that she is there, she is actually listening, right? So that's very, very interesting. I love that you basically sort of like close the gap here between there's a need for people to be listened to and you provide that for them, basically, right? That's huge. So let's talk about that for a second, because you obviously, you said you use empathy and deep listening to help people overcome those, conflicts. How does that work then? Do you simply ask them specific questions and dig deeper and deeper and deeper to get to the root cause of the conflict?
Right before we go into that, I want to add something about the texting and the conversation thing. My wife is an amazing human being, and she got to the point where she understands that I am perceiving when she's texting for someone, for example, and we are talking at the same time. She got to the point to understand me, and she stepped into my shoes
Mm-hmm.
that just because I cannot be multitasking,
Yeah.
I am also perceiving other people as not being able to do
Yeah.
multitasking. So what I am thinking as a human being is,
Mm-hmm.
if I cannot do this, they cannot do it as well. So if they're on the phone,
Mm-hmm.
it means they're not listening to me, even
Yeah.
if they are actually listening to me,
Uh-huh.
as she does.
Yeah.
So she got to the point where she started, okay, let me finish this message.
Uh-huh.
I'll put it off, and then we'll have like
Yeah.
100% attention to each
That's
other.
fantastic. Yeah.
And that was one of the moments where I said, okay, this is it. It's actually about my preference.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer to be looked in the eye when I communicate with other people, because
Yeah.
that's the way I feel confident about that connection
Mm-hmm.
between us.
True.
And this is not only with my wife. It is
Mm-hmm.
actually, I've met clients that uh, wanted to interact with other people while we're working, and I
Mm-hmm.
saw it on myself, and I said, hey, please, while
Mm-hmm.
we're working, let's drop all the
Yeah.
phones and all other distractions.
Yeah.
Let's focus 100% on this.
Mm-hmm.
And now we can move into your question. And
Yeah.
this is my number one rule when I'm working with people, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is, live it out. And
Mm-hmm.
it is for two reasons. One, it's a selfish reason. It's for me, because
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm better to work
Mm-hmm.
with people when we're both 100% attentive to the same thing,
Yeah.
even if they have better capabilities than I do
Mm-hmm.
with distributive attention.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one is, whenever an interruption comes in, like you get a text message while, let's say we're trying to solve a conflict that you have right now,
Mm-hmm.
and you get a message, your mind is going to go to
Yeah.
a completely different narrative, and something else is going to be present in your mind. You won't
Mm-hmm.
be able to work on that anymore.
True.
So that's why when I listen to people, I say, okay, when I'm listening to you,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to put everything away, and all my attention, like 100%, is going to be with you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to keep eye contact. My ears are only for you. And
Mm-hmm.
when you do that with people, and
Mm-hmm.
whoever is watching this, don't believe me,
Mm-hmm.
just try it.
Yeah.
It's amazing. We have in my line of work, we have a saying that every person is equipped with everything they need,
Mm-hmm.
and they can reach to that resource they have
Mm-hmm.
if you listen to them
Yeah.
and you give them empathy. It's
Mm-hmm.
that simple. People don't need solutions, and they
Mm-hmm.
don't need suggestions, and they don't
Yeah.
need
True.
any kind of external help. They
Mm-hmm.
just need to be connected with their own resources and with their own creativity and ideas,
Mm-hmm.
because we are all creative people. Everybody's creative, but just because you are stuck in a conflict, for example,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have access to all that creativity, because you're focused on the problem so much, you don't
Mm-hmm.
see the forest because of the first line of trees.
Yeah. True.
And just by letting it out and
Mm-hmm.
someone being there to listen,
Mm-hmm.
actually that takes a lot of pressure off. And
Mm-hmm.
with the pressure going down, creativity boosts up.
True.
So
Yeah.
that unlocks a lot of things. And
Uh-huh.
yes, what I do, usually I have a number of questions that help people open up a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
because there are people that work with me, and I think more than half of the people that are working with me, especially if it's team related or
Mm-hmm.
family related,
Mm-hmm.
first of all, they're ashamed.
Mm.
And like, oh my God, what is this guy going to think of me if I'm
Yeah.
going to tell all the details or the truth about this conflict?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And everybody that works with me needs to hear this from me. And I'm always doing this. Is like, first rule,
Mm-hmm.
everything that they say has nothing to do with what I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not there to judge or
Yeah.
to think about what they did.
Mm-hmm.
That's not my... Imagine if I would do that with all the people I work with, I
Mm-hmm.
would have a lot of problems on my back.
Oh
It's not
yeah.
healthy for me either.
Absolutely not.
So when people hear this, that you can speak without being judged at all, then they start to open up a little bit.
Yeah.
And usually people work like this. They just give like a hint of what happened, just to test the waters a little bit.
Yeah.
And let's see, will I get like a raise in the eyebrow, or or something that would tell me that I'm gonna be judged later? Then they stop. And I'm doing my best. I'm a human being. I cannot say that I won't be surprised with some things, because I have been. I've seen things and I've heard things actually from my clients that were shocking.
Okay.
But what my approach to all those shocking things, and I know everyone is suffering because of a conflict or another in their personal or professional life, regardless. And their conflict is the biggest conflict in the world.
Yeah.
And some things are pretty heavy and big and shocking, and others are very common. But for them, I know it's their biggest problem, and there's nothing bigger and nothing more important in the world. Because it's theirs. It's like IKEA furniture. If you mount it, it's more beautiful. It's like that. So it's my conflict. I created it. And that's why this is my mission in when I work with people on the individual level, and even with the teams is pretty much the same. I encourage them to get it all out, because when they speak it out loud and they explain it to me, the best thing they do is they actually explain it to themselves. And it becomes so much more clear. And when you have clarity, you make better decisions.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Better decisions. That's
absolutely agree.
One of the simplest things. And I just had a coaching call with someone that on a personal situation, a personal relationship, where a divorce was just happened, and there are like fights and children involved, and very, very dramatic stuff. And they just reached to the conclusion that they have so much grudge for the other, and they are fighting at the expense of the children. And when they realized that, they said, hey, I don't actually need to make the other one suffer. But I enjoyed it. And I say, okay, what if you could find joy, or even more or better kind of joy, somewhere else? And your kids are safe for that. And this is a model that you are teaching your kids. This is how a relationship should look like, because kids are taking everything in. So people that have this kind of issues, like at home, unfortunately, they weaponize their children. And if there is someone who's watching this that's in that position, please stop.
Really. Absolutely. And I love a lot of about what you're saying, and I want to go back to the fact that we all know sort of the solution to our conflict, to our question that we have that is bogging us all the time. And the perfect example that I thought about was going back to my girlfriend, where she had a conflict or a question, or she had to make a decision and she didn't know how to make the decision. She would make like a voice message to me over like 3 to 4 minutes, first like describing the problem, describing the challenge, and then by the end of the voice message, she already found her own answer just by talking about that and just by sharing it to me. She was like, never mind, I already figured it out, so don't worry, sorry about all the minutes that I basically wasted. So that's very interesting, that everybody of us has the answer inside of us, but is not available to see that because, as you said, because of the first lines of trees that are covering sort of the forest. So that's actually genius. And, I would love to know, like, how can people, find that, like, because sometimes people cannot hire a coach for that, right? But they obviously can freely talk. So what would be a sort of solution for somebody who might have a conflict inside of them right now, or a difficulty, is like a difficult decision that they have to make, and they don't really have anybody to talk to? Is there anything that they can do, in their comfort of their own home?
Well, this just came to my mind, and I don't want to take it out.
Mm-hmm.
They should definitely get your number from that answering machine.
Yeah. True.
It's one of the ways.
Uh-huh.
So an answering machine would be nice because the answering machine is always listening.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes this is, I actually tried this out.
Mm-hmm.
So whoever is at the point, and they, I don't know, they don't afford a coach, or they
Mm-hmm.
don't afford getting like professional support for this,
Mm-hmm.
there's always a friend that's
Yeah.
a good listener.
Mm-hmm.
And you know your friends, you know the people around you that are good listeners.
Yeah.
And even if they are not so good listeners, and I'm going to clarify what a good listener is in a
Mm-hmm.
moment, the one thing you could do is as simple as this: go to that one person and say, hey, I need to talk to someone about something, and what I
Mm-hmm.
need you to do is nothing. Just
Yeah.
listen.
Mm-hmm.
Don't tell me anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't give me solutions.
Mm-hmm.
Just listen. If you want to ask me questions, ask.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it.
Yeah.
And you would be surprised how many people around you would be willing to do that for nothing,
Mm-hmm.
just to support you.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm planning to launch a challenge here, and
Mm-hmm.
it's called the Empathic Listening Challenge,
Mm-hmm.
where people that are joining in are going to win stuff from
Mm-hmm.
me if they complete the challenge. And the challenge
Okay.
is about going out and offering to listen to people that need
Oh,
listening to.
nice. Yeah.
And what is actual listening?
Mm-hmm.
Because how do you know someone is a good listener?
Yeah.
Well, we all know those people when you tell a joke
Mm-hmm.
and they say, oh, that's a nice joke, but let me tell you my joke, which is
Oh, yeah.
much better.
Uh-huh.
This is not a good listener.
Yeah.
But let's take the joke side, because we all
Mm-hmm.
like joking with our groups and sharing jokes around and
Mm-hmm.
have fun.
Yeah.
But what about when you have a problem, or you just experienced something that was frustrating or you didn't like, and you
Mm-hmm.
want to share that with your friends? And there are two types of people listening to you
Mm-hmm.
in that group. The one that says, oh, that happened to you? Oh, that's nothing. Let me tell you what happened to me.
Yeah.
That's not a listener.
Uh-huh.
But the listener is that person that said, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. What what happened more specifically?
Mm-hmm.
So the person that asks the questions
Yeah.
is the person that actually listens.
Mm-hmm.
The person
True.
that wants to complete your story with their
Mm-hmm.
story are not thinking about you,
Yeah.
not even a cent.
Mm.
And I hope I'm not going to ruin relationships with this.
No.
But unfortunately, we all have that need to express ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And we all have the need to be listened to,
Yeah.
and the need to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
So that don't take it personally when people say, oh, you had a problem, or
Mm-hmm.
you had a bad day, what about my day?
Mm-hmm.
Well, don't take it personally.
Yeah.
They're just at a lower level than you
Mm-hmm.
are, and they
True.
see you much better than
Yeah.
they see themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So they actually just need some listening
Mm-hmm.
on their behalf. And
True.
let me share a story with you,
Yeah,
because
please.
I actually had this at some point. I was working with a group of people trying to solve like a more ample conflict in a company.
Mm-hmm.
And there were things that were working well, but there were some things that weren't working at all.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I had a meeting face to face with the leader of that organization.
Mm-hmm.
And I had one of my down moments, and I
Yeah.
rarely have that with clients, but I said, hey, look, I tried this and it's not working, and that is not working. And I was so low energy
Yeah.
in that meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, oh, so you think that is bad? Oh, let me tell you what is really bad. And he started saying, like, dropping like
Uh-huh.
trains,
Uh-huh.
cargo ships of information on me.
Yeah. Oh,
And I
crap.
was like,
Oh my
okay,
God. That's this problem.
okay. Then I said, what if I listen to him?
Mm-hmm.
And what I did, and this is what I'm encouraging everyone to do, when someone has this and they just want to let everything go and spit it out, encourage them to do it.
Yeah.
And I told to myself in that moment when it was plain clear to me that that person was not listening a thing that I was saying about his organization, he actually spit it all out. He said everything that he had on his soul. And I said to myself, I'm going to listen up until he hasn't got a word left to say.
Okay.
And we spent 2 hours. Me, just staying. I haven't said a word.
Wow.
I barely asked a couple of questions just to clarify things because it wasn't clear for me. And after those 2 hours, he grabbed my hand and said, oh my God, I've never had such a good discussion in my life.
A good discussion with myself, basically, right?
Yes.
Wow.
Because in all discussions, people listen to reply and or to share their story. But we're not listening. And this is a huge problem in society.
Yeah.
And it's global. It's not culturally limited to a country or a religion or something. No. It's global.
Yeah.
And this is one of the big issues that are actually stopping us being our best version of ourselves. Because if you want to be at like your best version every day, you got to do the things that enable you to be the best version of yourself.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just hoping and just dreaming about it is foolish. Put some action to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. And, it's amazing that, just that incident where somebody can just vent and just like let everything out is actually just solving the problem, right? And it's actually so easy if you think about it, of just like listening to it, but in the end it's so incredibly powerful. And just if you realize that, this is actually the solution to a lot of problems on this world, is just listening and being there, then I think a lot of, problems would be gone just by, having people to listen to, right? But let me, ask you again, like, we talked about empathy, right? But I believe that the concept of empathy is not really clear to some people. Like, what is actual empathy?
Wow, thank you for this question. I will never, ever miss a chance to explain empathy.
Yeah.
I just had a conversation with someone, and this is going to maybe stir some debate and some controversy here, because there are people that think empathy is something and people that think is something different. Before I'm going into what I call empathy, and I have this verified with people that are also in the field actively, but there are people that think empathy is being able to feel what the other person is feeling.
Yeah.
And that's not empathy, that's sympathy.
Oh, okay.
It's so different. But we use that word because that's the common meaning in a society, even if it's wrong.
Yeah.
But it's wrong. Empathy actually means being able to understand and acknowledge the feelings, needs, and thoughts of the other person without feeling them or necessarily agreeing with their thoughts. So let's say we are in a debate, as I used to be when I was part of that organization as a board member, and you have an opinion and I have a contradictory opinion with you. And you acknowledging my perspective and say, hey, I hear you, I understand that's your opinion and I respect that, and this is mine. When you have that kind of a talk, there's no conflict.
Yeah.
But what is conflict? Because this is another huge question. Because conflict is a conceptual word that we describe like a huge array of situations. And conflict can be of many, many types. And I'm starting from with the people that are seeing conflict as war, to the people that see conflict as an argument with their wives or husbands.
Yeah.
Well, if you put into that spectrum, there is one common denominator to all that. Is one side trying to make the other side think that this is the better decision and the only, and their own way of thinking is wrong.
Yeah.
So if we have a conversation and I'm trying to impose my worldview on you and make you decide the way I would, to make you see things the way I would, which are contrary to your perspective, that's when you get frustrated, and you will be in conflict with me, and you will meet me with resistance. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people that do this as a default way of expressing themselves, when in fact it's so much more efficient to just, hey, this is my perspective, and I think this is the only perspective that's gonna be useful in our situation, but I accept that other people might have a different idea.
Yeah.
Because conflict is the absence of respect.
True.
And when we still have respect and we are equal as human beings in a conversation, then I cannot be upset with you.
Yeah.
Basically.
So true. That's so true. And
so
having that, go ahead.
Yeah. So when there is a gap in respect, as I really love using this expression, when one person is more equal to the other person.
More equal. Yeah.
That's when the balance is lost, and the person that's on top and in a power position will manifest its power over the weak, and the weak one will get frustrated and fight back.
Yeah.
And that's how conflicts are born. And my personal opinion about large scale conflicts, let's say company versus company, so we don't go to countries versus country. It's actually a person from one company versus the one person from the other company. But these persons are leaders, and they managed to assemble an army for their ideal.
Yeah.
So in essence, all conflicts come down to one little thing, which is seeing your opponent as a human being. And then you don't have a conflict anymore. You have a competition. Yeah. You might have a healthy collaboration, even though you don't agree on things. And you transform conflicts, as you said earlier, are an incredible way to manifest energy. But what you do with that energy that is being generated in a conflict, you can just throw it down the drain and waste it. Or you can actually convert it towards something that's more useful.
Yeah.
And I've heard this a few days ago. It was related to all the situations with the deaths around coronavirus. And as bad as it sounds, it makes a little bit of sense.
Yeah.
And the affirmation was this: there are a lot of babies conceived right after funerals. And as dark as this sounds, tragedy is always followed by hope.
Yeah.
And it's a cycle. It's just like economy. It's just like the seasons. It's in perpetuity, because people are born and they die. They grow up, they make kids, they die, and the kids will make kids, and so on. But the thing is, when you have like a discord, a conflict, an argument with someone, and you manage to take that energy and say, okay, let's use this energy for something that's better. There are people that when they get out of a conflict in a constructive way, they get out more powerful in their relationships.
Yeah.
And that can be the relationship with your boss at work. That could be the relationship with your employees if you're an entrepreneur, or with your spouse.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many people, like in the private lives, when they have a partner, a girlfriend, or a husband, or whatever, a spouse, they have an argument like over something that's important or something that's really stupid.
Yeah.
And they manage to navigate the conflict. And
Mm-hmm.
afterwards, they just say, I love you with so much more passion.
Mm-hmm. True.
Why? Because they chose to use that energy in order uh, to empower their relationship, to solidify it, to make it stronger.
Yeah.
And that's a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And
True.
this is, by the way, this is one of the most common objections that people have to what I just said, is that is a choice.
Yeah.
And they reply, but he made me do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
True.
Let's talk about that one.
So it's,
Who made you
it's
do what?
yeah, it's a choice, on both sides, right? And it's important that both sides agree on that, because what happens if, like, there's a conflict, there's an argument, and one part of the group is wanting to resolve that argument, wanting to resolve that conflict, and wants to use that energy for a good cause. However, the other party is just like not accepting the fact, right, that they are constantly, no, you are the one that is doing this and that, and they don't make the choice to use that energy for something, productive or constructive. What's going on there, or how can you resolve that?
Well, thank you for the challenge here. It really varies from situation to situation, and in essence, there are some very similar ingredients in this recipe. Even though a conflict at work could be fairly different when you have an argument with a colleague or a boss or an employee about something, and you want to make things work, and the other person says, hey, but you did this. And it's constantly blaming, and whatever narrative you have in order to make things work, they constantly manage to turn that around and blame you for something.
Exactly.
Well, the one thing I would do, and this is what I am doing for the people that actually want to solve things, when they come to me, I'm listening. What the person is saying, that's always blaming the other person, is I need to be listened to. And actually, I've seen this so many times now, and I have in my very close network a case right now where people are fighting on a personal matter, and one is trying to solve everything and make things work, and the other one is say, nah,
let's fight.
Whatever you do is not going to be enough, and those kind of messages, and it's so tiring and so frustrating for the person that's trying to fix things up. But on the other hand, they fail to understand that you don't have to impose your solutions, because that's the problem. You're forcing that person to, hey, this is the solution, eat it, or else, and instead try changing the approach. And this is a lesson I learned from martial arts. I practiced jiu-jitsu and ninjutsu when I was a teenager, and I did that for a number of years.
Nice.
And also a little bit of Aikido. So the one thing they taught us there back then was, when your opponent is trying to hit you, don't try to block that. Like, it's just like trying to stop a wave. It's going to throw you to the ground. So instead of trying to stop that, try to absorb it and redirect. So what these people are trying to say when they're blaming you for whatever is, I'm hurt. I need attention. I need appreciation, and I need to be listened to. When you do any of these four, not all, one, pressure will go down.
Yeah. That's fantastic. That's
Eh,
fantastic.
but you need some presence of mind to be present in that and say, how do I figure that out?
Mm-hmm.
How does this, like, okay, I'm in that situation, now I need to do that.
Mm-hmm.
That is the hardest part.
True.
When they're doing it and say, okay, now I need to step back.
Mm-hmm.
It's a choice again.
Yeah, it's a choice. Yeah. Dude, like empathy sounds like a superpower. Like once you truly have, as you explained it, empathy, and you have that skill, what are some of the benefits that truly come from empathy? Like, because you are an expert on that, and I can just, think about the benefits that it's going to have on people. But what have you noticed that empathy is bringing to the table and changing lives?
Well, I can tell some of the benefits that I have from this, and I can tell a little bit about the stories of my
Mm-hmm.
customers.
Yes.
Um, for me, the best thing empathy actually provided me
Mm-hmm.
was to finally manage the communication between me and my parents.
Mm. Yeah.
I've not been the easiest child to raise.
Mm-hmm.
I've done a lot of dumb shit in my childhood. Like,
Yeah.
my parents were not proud.
Yep.
Definitely
Uh-huh.
some gray hairs there. There
Mm-hmm.
are, and they weren't really happy about the way I grew up.
Yeah.
So that affected a lot the communication between me and them, from my behalf especially,
Mm-hmm.
because I was maybe feeling upset because they weren't treating me as other parents would treat their children, and all
Mm-hmm.
those kind of problems, like
Yeah.
the biggest problems I had at that age.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, uh, they are also having that image of me doing dumb stuff.
Mm.
So when I started to actually get better with empathy, my relationship with my parents started to just get better overnight.
Yeah.
And having good relationship with your family,
Mm-hmm. It's huge.
oh my God, how much that is
Yeah.
influencing your life, you have no idea.
True.
There is this guy which is an amazing person. His name
Mm-hmm.
is Menis Yusri,
Mm-hmm.
and he's facilitating some very powerful workshops. And
Mm-hmm.
he said this: the relationship with your mother is the relationship with your life.
Wow. That's deep.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Ouch. And when he told that to me, it was like the most violent wake up call that I had.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty rough.
Yeah.
When you let it sink in, it's rough. So that was one.
Mm-hmm.
The second one, I would love to bring back the couple arguments
Mm-hmm.
discussion.
Yeah.
Um, Me and my wife are. There are a lot of people around us that say that we are the perfect couple, and
Mm-hmm.
we are like perfect for each other, and we
Mm-hmm.
communicate at the level that they wish they could do.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody thinks that we are ever arguing,
Yeah.
and that's so not true.
Yeah.
That's not true at all.
Uh-huh.
And we actually are very like powerful characters, both of
Mm-hmm.
us. So when
Mm-hmm.
we argue, we
Mm-hmm.
do it in style.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in the beginning of our relationship, we actually had very intense fights, like
Mm-hmm.
to the point that we are both crying and
Oh yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And when we got to the point where we developed empathy, the both
Mm-hmm.
of us, we studied this together actually. Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we have like an argument, it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't last more than 30 minutes.
Yeah. Nice.
Before,
Mm-hmm.
it could last like 3 days.
True. Mm-hmm.
And 30 minutes, and after 30 minutes, we hug and say, this was dumb from our behalf,
Mm-hmm.
so let's just figure it out in a different way.
Yeah. It's
And
awesome.
tell me again, we always do this, just tell
Mm-hmm.
me again what is from your perspective, what is the problem from your perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Let me hear it from your shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And whoever does this first in our relationship,
Mm-hmm.
that's the person that ends the conflict.
Yeah.
And it happens, and it's normal, because
Mm-hmm.
you cannot have the same ideas, you don't have the same experiences, you didn't grow up the same, so you
Yeah.
will operate differently.
Mm-hmm. True.
And it's normal when you operate differently from another person
Mm-hmm.
to not to match 100%. And actually, that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
If you would be always at 100%, you wouldn't actually be
That's
happy about that.
true. Yeah. There
It's
needs to
like,
be sort of like those
would you
ups and
be
downs.
grateful for the sun with no rain?
Mm-hmm.
Well, since I'm in the Netherlands.
Yeah. I'm grateful, like for me as well. Like, Hamburg is so rainy in the last few weeks. So I definitely appreciate every single ray of sun that I get to feel. So
Yeah.
definitely agree on that there needs to be ups and downs to sort of appreciate the good times.
Yeah. That's
Fantastic.
true.
Yeah, awesome. And I would love for a lot of more people to experience that sense of empathy and learning to be more empathetic, because as you said, it's going to change a lot in the relationship with your parents, with your family, with your spouse, wife, husband, whatever, right? So have you read some books on empathy specifically that other people can read as well?
I get this question a lot, and
Mm-hmm.
I do have a number of books, but I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
recommend only one.
Yes.
Um, the book is called Nonviolent Communication.
Okay.
By Marshall Rosenberg.
Mm-hmm.
It's an amazing book, and this is the book I started with. This is the one book that opened my eyes so much.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you something. I gave this recommendation to a friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
She was in a not so bright spot in her relationship.
Yeah.
And she was like, okay, I'm gonna read it.
Mm-hmm.
And she read it, and she was like, oh my God, this book is so awesome. Can you recommend me like 2 or 3 more books?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Just apply what is in there.
Exactly. Put
Yeah.
that one to action, and we'll
Mm-hmm.
speak about other books afterwards.
Yeah.
Because this is one thing that we think is helpful,
Mm-hmm.
getting more information in.
Mm-hmm. It's not.
No.
Yeah.
And I think Tony Robbins said this like
Mm-hmm.
20 years ago or
Mm-hmm.
more, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
That information is power. And he said, no, information is not power.
Yeah.
Implementation of that information is real power.
Yeah.
And for some reason, people are just acquiring more and more knowledge without being able to implement. So my philosophy here is read less, do more.
I love that. Yeah.
And this is not a call to drop reading. Okay. It's actually a call to do more. If you want,
awesome.
if you want to read.
Yeah.
But make like a commitment that what you're reading, you're implementing. Otherwise, it's just wasted memory.
Yeah.
And that's
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. Because, a lot of people, and I read that question earlier in a ClickFunnels group where somebody, was asking like, hey, I have all those books, and if I read them by the end of the year, like, is there a way I will not be successful? And I was like, I think you answered that on that as well, right?
I did.
That like, there are like tons of ways where you're not going to be successful, because just reading those books is not going to help you do anything.
Exactly.
And you will not be making more money. It's about implementing what is in those books. So instead of reading all of them, how about you read just a few and implement what is in there, and you'll be so much more successful by the end of the year.
That is true.
Than reading all of them, right? So that's absolutely fantastic. And now, before we wrap up this interview here, because we have been talking a lot about conflicts when it came to having 2 different parties, right? With the boss and the employer, wife and husband. But what about conflicts with yourself? Like, what if you have conflicts just inside of you, which perhaps some people don't realize that they have a conflict, but they feel like, all right, there's something off. Like, I don't feel right, but I do not know what it is. And sometimes they know what the conflict is, but how can you work on that?
Well, this is a huge question, and thank you for it, actually. Yeah. I think we should make another episode. The reason that we have conflicts with ourselves. That is a question that bugged me for so many years.
Yeah.
Why do people are unhappy with themselves?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons, and I'm going to stop with this one in our interview, because otherwise I'm going to start and
Too long,
won't be able to stop me. And one of the reason is because we make the sacrifice of pleasing whatever it is, or whatever is pleasing for ourselves, in order to please the other people around us. So we are making our boss happy, we're making our spouse happy, and we are trying to be the person that we are supposed to be for each and every person in our lives, at the cost of not being who we actually are for ourselves.
True. Yeah, that's...
And self-empathy is so powerful.
Oh yeah.
When you can be aware of that, when you can be aware of your own needs and feelings, you start solving all that, because we get so much clutter. I need to wear this hat at work. I need to wear this hat when I go shopping. I need to wear this hat with my children, or with I don't know, with my spouse or something.
Yeah.
But what hat do I wear when I'm with myself? I just had a conversation yesterday with a friend of mine, and he's in a quite hot spot right now. And he said, I need to do anything just for one reason, not to be alone with the thoughts in my head.
Yeah.
I'm not ready to handle that.
Yeah. That's
well one of the there is a very limited number of big discussions that we need to have in our lives.
Yeah.
And one of them is the discussion with ourselves.
Oh yeah.
And
Absolutely.
not the kind of discussion where I'm justifying my behavior even though I know I was wrong, because this is something that we also do a lot. But rather, okay, this is coming to my mind. Why? How can I embrace that? And how can I use that information? What's that feeling signaling to me? What's this relationship telling me? How is it feeding me? Yeah. Why is that important to me? And when you're in the position to analyze the things in your life where you are aware how they affect you, and you might have a toxic relationship at work or at home, it doesn't matter, a toxic relationship. And actually I've seen this in action. I was at a client's office, and there was this person, she was a team leader, and she was very disruptive with everything. Like in that day specifically, she was like getting all the attention from everybody, and she was interrupting constantly in every discussion. She was having that moment when she just dropped everything with a sound. Oh. And it's like
just I have my attention now.
That could be so annoying in an office, and I was just there watching what's going to happen, because it was going to happen. Even if I would have intervened, it was going to happen. So what happened? Someone at some point had enough and said, hey, would you mind? And made a list of demands. As stop doing that, go somewhere else, solve your issues somewhere. And that was the moment when this lady started to burst in tears.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Because we carry our experiences and our problems everywhere. And this thing called work-life balance, it's a myth. It's crap, actually. And I'm saying this because it's a shout out to the companies that figured this out already, and it's a message to the ones that didn't yet. And if you're an organization that pretends that people leave their personal problems at the entrance when they get to work, then you lost the game.
Yeah.
Because there's no way a person can detach. It's not like my left side deals only with my personal problems and my right side goes to work. If that would be the case, we could split and leave my left side to work 24 hours on my personal problems, and I could make more money with my professional side.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, emotions are not something that we just put it in I don't know, in a drawer and lock them there.
True.
We take that. So if you have an employee or a colleague that has their children sick, do you think that person is not going to be affected while working?
Yeah, absolutely not. Yeah.
How is that possible?
Exactly. Yeah. Wow.
It's not. And the problem is not that the people come with this kind of issues at work. The problem is that we expect them to drop the issues.
Yeah.
And we don't expect them as oh, you didn't. Okay. We expect them and like, who are you to bring your personal problems into our conversation?
Yeah.
And in environments where this happens, it's so toxic. People are leaving. At the first opportunity, they just quit. And there are a lot of managers that have this question. Oh, people are always leaving our company.
Why?
Go figure.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Have you ever listened to how you approach their problems?
Yeah.
Because people go to work because they have problems. If they wouldn't have a financial problem, like if people would have enough money, a roof over their head, and happy in relationship, they wouldn't go to work.
No, probably not. Yeah.
They would do what they love.
Exactly.
Only.
Yeah, absolutely.
But unfortunately, even if you have all those, at some point, something will kick you in the butt.
For sure.
That's not going to feel nice. And life, it happens. And it's supposed to be with ups and downs.
Yeah, exactly.
But people expect from a position of power, like, and this is so annoying because I know people, and I actually experienced this myself. It is so annoying when someone senses that you're weak.
Yeah.
And they exploit that. And they say, I don't care about your problems. Now you have to do that or else you're fired.
Oh, damn.
What?
Oh my.
Let me tell you about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And unfortunately, most of the people, only a few people will say, okay, then I quit. And I quit right now because you're not respecting me. You're not listening to me.
True.
So there's no way of continuing this relationship. But unfortunately, most people fall into submission and say, okay, I need this job because I need to pay for the medicines for my kids.
Yeah.
And what do? They get it inside. And a month, a year later, they have a huge conflict with themselves saying, I should have quit. I'm still in this position and I had the chance to quit and I didn't. So I actually betrayed myself. And that is like the root of many conflicts that we have with ourselves.
Yeah, that's very, very powerful. And I believe also very dangerous, right? Because that's sort of what, how burnouts happen, because we just eat everything, into ourselves, and we just lock all those problems, all those challenges, everything negative that is around us, and we don't deal with it. We just eat that up. And especially I believe for men, that's also a very, very big problem, because men do not talk a lot about their emotions, and they do not tend to open up, because we've always have been told like, hey, man, don't cry and all of that crap basically. And because of that, men just eat up everything into themselves. And I have been personally like that as well, where, I didn't talk a lot about my problems or, the things that I was not happy about. And that led me to, this bucket got like always, it just like each drop made it like fuller and fuller and fuller until it just like bursted. And that was like the first time where I basically, broke down. I was like, man, I cannot do this. Like, this is horrible. And that's sort of what happens to a lot of people that just, they don't deal with that. They don't speak out to that. And that's why it's so dangerous. right? So that's why I wanted to ask about the, how to deal with personal conflict. But we're definitely going to do that, in the next episode, because otherwise we're going to go way too, outside of the range here. But I would love to, but we need to keep that for a second time.
Definitely.
All right.
I would love to.
All right, fantastic, man. So there's always one question I love to ask by the end of the interview, and I sort of almost already know what you're going to be answering to that. But if you had the ability to teach the entire world, like one concept, one, piece of wisdom that they would understand and apply, what would it be?
Well, it's as obvious as it gets, of course.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even go as far as empathy.
Mm-hmm.
I would just go with listening. How to empathically listen.
Mm-hmm.
That alone could
Mm-hmm.
solve so many problems in the world.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That
is the one thing I made a mission to spread this to as many people as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm going to launch that challenge. Yeah. And I'm going to put that, I'm actually working on a training right now. Mm-hmm. that I'm going to put online for free, so people can actually have no excuse whatsoever.
Awesome.
This is the basic information everyone needs to get, and the basic skills everyone needs to develop. So there shouldn't be any kind of limit for them to access it.
Awesome. So how can people find out more about what you do and about the training that you've talked about, and also about the podcast that you're about to launch? How can they reach out to you? How can they find you and learn more about what you do?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Well, there are a couple of things that I would like to mention here. Yes, the podcast is one of them, and I'm so excited because mm-hmm. yesterday we actually launched the pre-launch. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And people can just go to the anatomyofconflict.com, mm-hmm. and if they leave their email there, they get access on the behind the scenes, and mm-hmm. They can even propose topics and suggest guests for the podcast. Awesome. And things like that. Mm-hmm. And they're also gonna get some powerful information, and not only information, even access to training in mm-hmm. the field of empathy and how to deal with this kind of stuff.
Awesome.
Another thing that I'm working on right now is this training that I just mm-hmm. told you about, and I'm so confident that if I put it out there, people are just going to have a powerful tool, easy to follow. Yeah. And actually, it's not going to be something really complex, but mm-hmm. I designed, it's a one-page document, mm-hmm. a tool where you can see everything in one page. It's like a canvas where awesome. You list a number of conflicts that you had in your life. Mm-hmm. Then what you said, what they said, mm-hmm. and when you have that like overview of over more than just one conflict, mm-hmm. you'll see there are patterns. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the big issues that we have, and I am working hardly to help people solve that. We have buttons. Mm-hmm. So let me just give you a slight idea of what this is. Let's say in your line of work, there is something that annoys you to the end of the world. Mm-hmm. And you already know something is going to be annoying, or mm-hmm. someone will do something annoying when they first pronounce the word. Yeah. Uh-huh. Or in the personal life, when you do something that is considered by your girlfriend, for example, something mm-hmm. inappropriate, and she's gonna say, "Hey, you did that again." Mm-hmm. It's a button, and the definition of a button is mm-hmm. each time you press that thing, it will mm-hmm. trigger the same action.
Yeah. True. Yeah.
So there are some very powerful buttons that we all carry, mm-hmm. and this is what I'm going to put online very soon, and it's going to be on outofconflict.com. Mm-hmm. A way to identify your buttons. Simple. It's mm-hmm. like you can do it by yourself at mm-hmm. home, in privacy, full privacy, so nobody needs to know all your conflicts in your life, mm-hmm. because I know these kind of things can be quite sensitive. And when you know your buttons, you can start deactivating them. And that's the most beautiful part. It's like, imagine you have like a remote control, like the one you have for your TV. And each button triggers a different conflictual reaction or like anger or something in you. And just by not knowing your button is exactly like you having that remote control and hand it over to some other person and say, hey, this is the remote control where you control every reaction I have. Would you take care of this, please? Would you do that for me? Like, what does this button do?
Nice.
So that's my goal here, to help people see these buttons. And also on outofconflict.com, I have another tool. I really love one-page tools because they are super easy. It's an empathy checklist. So if there is anyone that wants to improve their empathy, and it's specifically designed for meetings, for work, but it can be applied as easily in personal life as well. So the thing is, you go to a meeting and you have a number of things that you need to give a mark from 1 to 10. And if you have a 10, then you're good at that specific field of empathy. If you have less, then you pick the ones that you have like a bad score, and you have 4 self-coaching questions to improve every day.
Awesome.
And I have people that actually reported back to me saying that they were working, the indication there is to work on one thing at a time, and they started working with one thing, and that one thing changed the way they were perceived in the company.
Nice.
And I was like, oh my God, this is way more powerful than I thought. So people should just go there and download it. It's on the first page.
Fantastic. I'll also make sure to leave the links in the description down below. So guys, if you want to learn more about Cristian's, empathy checklist and, his podcast and everything that he does right now, go ahead, check the links out in the description down below. And with that said, Cristian, is there anything else you would love to add to the end of the video interview before we wrap this up here?
There are 2 things. One of them is, if there is anybody who wants to interact with me or just want to develop their knowledge around what human needs are and how we process them and how we correctly identify feelings. I host a live video every evening on Instagram, and people interact with me there, and it's free and it's interactive, and we can tackle topics like this every day.
Awesome.
And so I'm inviting them to follow there, and I will provide you with
fantastic
with a Instagram handle. And the second one is, I want to congratulate you for doing this.
Thank you.
I've actually made a little bit of research about your work, and you have quite an online presence, and I'm really amazed by your work. So
thank you.
You're doing a great job, and
thank you.
I hope you keep it at least at this level, or maybe even bigger, because what you're doing, and with through this kind of conversations, I think you are actually managing to put a lot of value out there. And people should definitely subscribe to your channel and to be there, like, to constantly follow.
Fantastic.
So congratulations.
Thank you so much for the feedback. I really appreciate it. And it truly means a lot to me, because that's, what is the purpose of this podcast, to get people like you on to share their stories, share their expertise, and provide value to every single one that is watching, those interviews. So guys, if you enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed this interview, let me know in the comments down below, and also make sure to subscribe to this channel, just as Cristian said right now, so you get notified whenever I upload a new video. And I enjoyed our conversation, Cristian. Thank you so much for your time. And let's definitely schedule another one for the personal conflict kind of side of things and how to resolve those. I would definitely be keen to learn more about that as well.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Fantastic.
I felt amazing in this.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, and have a fantastic day. Bye-bye.